Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, folks. Hey, welcome to another episode of the Marketing You Practice podcast, the podcast where I have the pleasure of simplifying the marketing and the mindset so you, the chiropractor, can increase your income, your impact, and your enjoyment in practice too. In this episode, I had the wonderful pleasure of chatting with Dr. Jim Karagiannis, a fellow Melbourne chiropractor who's recently taken on the life-altering challenge of moving all the way from Melbourne to Barcelona. There's been a bit of a theme on the podcast recently about doing difficult things, and I thought, who better to chat to than somebody that's literally moved from one side of the world to the other. In this episode, Jim dives into the process of literally shedding part of his old identity and finding the courage to make this significant move. He opens up about the importance of clarity around his values and how this understanding really helped to guide him through a lot of the difficult challenges that happen. You'll also learn about some of the surprising childhood wounds that surfaced in the process. That reveals lessons that go well beyond just relocation as well. Now, whether you're a chiropractor facing your own challenges or simply want to understand how to overcome obstacles, I think you're going to find real value in this episode as well. Without any further ado, let's go and chat with Jim. Jim, welcome to the Marketing Your Practice podcast. How are you, buddy?
I'm keeping well, Angus. Thank you very much. Great to talk to you, and great to be back on the podcast again after a few years.
Yeah, it probably has been. It doesn't seem like a few years ago, but I loved our last conversation. I'm a huge fan of yours, of Bettina's as well, and I'm very much looking forward to today's chat. As I mentioned to you beforehand, a lot about it for selfish reasons.
Yeah.
I've been having a lot of discussions on the podcast of recent in around the importance of doing difficult things. And I have been watching your journey over the last 12 months, and it has been inspiring for me. Why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about what's been happening with you of recent and how that might come under the umbrella of difficult things, and then let's just unpack all of that.
Sure. I was saying to you just before we started recording, Angus, this has probably been, and I've been doing personal growth work for 30 odd years. There's a lot of chiropractors do. It just feels like it's hand in glove association. And without doubt, I would say that the last 12, 18 months have been the biggest growth opportunity. He has that one. Biggest growth opportunity I could possibly have had, purely to reveal myself and Bettina to ourselves. So a lot of the times you don't know, you butt up against yourself and you butt up against challenges that are deeper than you thought they were, but you start this process and it just it evolves. So how it all started about 18 months ago, Bettina was contacted to come over to Barcelona in Spain and be a part of education for chiropractors. And for the longest time, Bettina and I coach chiropractors, and we'd always be frustrated that, okay, they're getting to a 5-year stage, and we kept on saying, someone should do something about this, or why does this keep happening and keep happening? And the universe, the way I think about it, gives you opportunities to test whether you're full of BS or whether you really are serious about what you're saying. So coupled with this, I guess in the frustration was this opportunity to go, hey, what you've been saying about wanting to make a difference and a change? Well, here's the opportunity. Were you BSing yourself, or are you actually being honest? And that was where it started. And that started us on a journey of disentangling and packing up our life, our former life, and everything we knew about it, to embrace a legacy and an adventure like nothing else we had before. So that's really it. So we left Melbourne straight after the lockdown. A lot of people have said to us, did you leave because of the lockdown? No. But I'll be honest, it wasn't made harder to leave the most lockdown city in the world, to leave and live in Europe. But that was the catalyst for it. And we packed up and moved to the other side of the world to start a new adventure.
So there was a lot. You sold your practice?
We sold our practice. We considered managing it from a distance, but we just felt that with what we were going to do, it was going to be too difficult. So we sold our practice. And that was the final piece that made it work for us to move on. Yeah.
And that was a practice that you'd had for how long?
Well, we had the practice for 21 years, and we bought it from a chiropractor who had it for 30 odd years. So it was the longest established practice in Brunswick West, back where we were. So it was going back, 60, 70, 80 years.
Yeah.
And it was a huge emotional, as you would know, when you sell something that has been a big part of you, to move on is a big thing, and particularly the people that you're with. That was probably the hardest thing. So I've bought and sold things, real estate assets. They don't really have the emotional connection, but the hardest part about it was saying goodbye to people. And in our case, not just goodbye and I'm moving 3 suburbs up to another state. It's like, dude, I'm moving to the other side of the world. And that was really difficult because there's people I know that I probably will not see again. So that was really challenging.
And did you sell a family home as well?
Yeah, so that was taken care of. We had, the way we'd structured things, we had family home was sold. We had other investment properties taken care of. So they're in place. We've effectively said, okay, how do we structure this move to set up a life on the other side? And that part of that involved selling a big home. So the reason for that was our kids are adults now. They're in their 20s. And actually really interesting. I guess the only gratitude that I have for the whole COVID experience and the lockdown was our kids moved back into home with us. And we had 2 extra years where they were just about to head off and branch off and do their own thing.
Yeah.
But they came back in and stayed with us. And we had 2 extra years with our kids as adults, which was phenomenal, which was really great. And the moment that this opportunity came up for Bettina particularly, our boy, we came and said to our boys, listen, here's an opportunity for us to do something that's really important to us. How do you feel about that? And they said, well, look, our whole life you've been encouraging us to back ourselves and go for it. So go for it. So in that spirit, our eldest son, he's moved to New York to chase his dream of in the finance world. And our youngest son's moved to London. So for us, we were empty nesters as well as an opportunity. So it made good sense for us to let go of a part of our previous life and move on. And that's what we've done. So we've moved to, we didn't need a large home anymore anyway. So it just made logical sense to change that over.
I ask all these questions. There might be some of our listeners.
Blank canvas, Angus. Like, you can ask me anything you want.
Angus, you're a nosy bugger. But I'm going to like put a parenthesis in around things for our listeners here at the moment. Okay. The reason I had Jim come on today is that for many of you, we all have difficult things in our lives. For some of us, it's selling a practice and moving to the other side of the world. Maybe for you, it's employing an extra staff person. Maybe it's getting rid of that staff person. Maybe it's raising your fees. Maybe it's instigating a missed appointment fee. So I think for me and my value systems, what Jim has done has been very difficult and very challenging. And so I'm interested from a personal view, how did he go about doing it? And that's what I want you to listen to as well. If Jim can sell a practice of 20 plus years, move away from families, how can I take on board what he's used and use it to help me get through my difficult things as well? And I love the languaging in around the challenges were an opportunity to reveal ourselves to ourselves there as well.
Yeah.
So when all this was going on, was there any second thinking? Are we making the right decision? How did you keep focused on the task?
Yeah, great question. And see, the Bettina and I have been married for over 30 years, and for 35, we've been together. So we've got a long relationship together. And for the most part, and this is a really good question because it reveals how we went through the process. So for the most part of our relationship, I'm going to go do this bull at a gate type of person, and Bettina's been the steadying hand, the voice of reason and logic, but has actually really helped. But a lot of the time she said, you know what, if this is what you're going to do, I'm behind you 100%, which was awesome. And when an opportunity came for Bettina, I actually sat back and went, you know what, I can do this for you now, right? I want to do this for you. I'll follow you to the other side of the world. And in her wisdom, what was really amazing, she said, look, no, I don't want you to do that. I actually want you to get really clear that you are okay to do this for you, not just for me. Because if things get tough, which invariably they are, I don't ever want you to look back on this decision and regret it because you did it because of me. So I took an extra day or so to get really clear on why there were benefits of this. And I had to do a lot of the work we do with our clients is get them aligned head, heart, gut. You know, so they were fully engaged, that to know that they know that this is the right decision, irrespective of what difficulties will come. And the moment that I was clear and went, yep, that's the right decision, there was no turning back. So to me, irrespective of what challenges lay ahead, I was clear that this was the right decision. And so had I launched prior to having that sort of certainty in self, I would have probably second guessed elements of what we've done. And there would have been times where Bettina's right, I might have gone, you know what, I did this for you, and it wouldn't have been fair on her. So for us, for a relationship, we had to ensure that we were both solid, irrespective of where that took us. And I think that's probably been the biggest learning, and the most that you could extrapolate to other areas, that if you're in alignment, you don't know what's going to happen, but you're clear that this is the path forward. And it's not burning the bridges, but it's about saying, okay, I'm moving forward no matter what happens.
So I'm fascinated by that. So how do you get that certainty? You talked about, I went head, heart, gut.
Yeah.
Because for so many people that I speak to, they're stuck at some metaphorical fork in the road of, do I make this decision, that decision? You went, do I stay or do I go? And you went through a process that said, all right, now I'm aligned with this, it's all go. And I think there are a bunch of people, we don't like taking tablets as chiropractors, but if they could take the certainty tablet, we would scoff that. Where does that come from?
Well, it's funny because, you know, like the same sort of thing, the analogies that we could use with the whole matrix, red pill, blue pill thing. And as I said, we don't like talking about that, but fundamentally, I was really clear and have been really clear on what my values are. You know, I'd live and die for my values and things that really define me. And so for me to I always defer to the certainty I get from living congruently with my highest values. And so if something is a number one, and for me, it's love without question. And so, but if I've got a situation where I am confronted with an opportunity that's a value 5 or 6, I look at this and I go, 1 beats 6 every time. I'll always go with 1. And so that, to me, that's how I can make really difficult decisions in a nanosecond, because I've done the work to get clear on who I am, what's important to me, and etc. So just because you are clear on your values doesn't mean it's easy, but at least you can look at that and go, hey, I did this, I got my butt kicked, I've learned something, but I wouldn't change it. And that's really the way that I've gone about it, is have we embraced difficult paths and circumstances in the last 12, 18 months? 100%. I wouldn't change it, because I was clear that that was what was right for us. Does that answer that, or does that create more questions?
No. You know what? Lots of people talk about the importance of clarifying values.
Yeah.
And I don't see people sharing the practical application of it, which is, where do we use this? So, you know, it's like putting together a Swiss Army knife that then allows me to make decisions. And interestingly, in around COVID and things like that too, I learned a lot of things about my values from, like, I really pushed a lot of them in some comfortable ways, and also some really uncomfortable ways too. And you know, it's one thing to say my value is love, freedom, flexibility, whatever it is there too. But until we get tested on that too. So I love that as you know, the simplicity and the power of values, I think is great. I'm also interested with the game that we often play with ourselves that I don't think is valuable when making decisions, is there's a framework that we run decisions through called the right and wrong framework. And I don't think it's the case most of the time. So I was chatting with a coaching client the other day who was trying to make some decisions about 2 different jobs. And we could sit down, and so if we went from a value point of view, we might not be able to distinguish them from a value point of view. So, and in her mind, she has this framework that one of them is going to be the right decision and one of them is going to be the wrong decision. And then I said to her, I said, what if both of these jobs worked out incredibly? Like, both of them were dream scenarios, like both of them. If both of them were a great decision, which one would you take? And she answered immediately. It was fascinating. So instead of trying to think one's right and wrong, what if both of them are amazing? What if staying here in Melbourne has come true? What if moving to Barcelona, your dreams come true? What do you want to do? Barcelona. And it takes a lot of pressure off.
I love that. It's interesting you say that, because we do a very similar thing when we talk to people, when people are split and they're not sure, but they know that they know, but they either something blocks them from doing that, whether it's fear, doubt, uncertainty, whatever. So we use a scenario. We go, hey, I've got a coin. Heads, you're going to Barcelona. Tails, you're staying in Melbourne. I'm going to flick it up. And they go, which one do you want it to be? And they go, heads.
Yeah.
So they really wanted that, but unless you put them under compression. And so we were put under compression, and it helped that both Bettina and I, being coaches, we could actually put ourselves under compression to really solidify that. But the moment that you know, there's truth, and then there's courage, because you have to then go, okay, I've decided this is really important to me. Now, will I actually have the courage to see it through? Because one of the biggest revealing questions is, what do you know to be true that you don't want to admit to yourself?
Yep.
And that's the bigger issue than taking a big leap.
Yes.
In my opinion.
I think there's a fantasy, Jim, that just because we're certain about something, that therefore I shouldn't need courage. And
look, that's exactly right. It's exactly, because it doesn't carry you through. It's not diplomatic immunity that I have courage once and I'll have it forever. That's exactly right. I try and live out of the world of shoulds and should be and right and wrong. It's just, it is. And that gives me the certainty in self to go, hey, in any one moment, I can make the decision that feels right for me, whether it's perceived as right or wrong. Like, there are people, don't get me wrong, people looked at what we were doing and said, that sounds fantastic. What an adventure, what an opportunity. Other people are like, how could you be doing this? Why would you? It rocked them to the core. So it's really, and not rocked them to the core in terms of the jump, but it's like against their value structure, they were not prepared to give up a lot of what they had as perceived security in order to achieve a higher legacy goal. And that's really, for us, that was the compelling drive and reason, was to go, at the end of the day, our kids are older, chiropractic has been great to us, and we've been, we've loved the part of it. But if we really want to make an impact, we want to make it different, here's an opportunity. And so for us, that was a drive. It was more we were pulled to this rather than actually resisting and holding on for the sake of basically sameness or certainty.
Yeah. Have you heard Dan Sullivan, strategic coach Dan Sullivan,
yes,
talk about the difference between courage and confidence?
Love it. Yeah. And I love this stuff. And it's also, I love his work, and it's also the who, not how. And I love his work, and I immerse myself in that. But perhaps you can expand on that.
Well, I think because, if I'm talking to somebody about some marketing, social media, for instance, and say, look, I want to make some videos, but I'm not confident. And I'm like, of course you're not confident. You've never done it before. And we're looking for confidence. We get confidence when we've done something before. You're confident that you can put your jumper on tomorrow because you've done it beforehand. And confidence feels good. And in this situation here, what you actually need is courage. And I like to remind that courage never feels good. If it's feeling good, then you have confidence, not courage. And when we see people that we admire, when we see mums go and do extraordinary things for their families, and our armed service put themselves in danger there too, we admire courage, but we think that their courage and that feels good, but it never feels good to them. And I have to remind myself too that we're looking for it. It's an oxymoron. It's never going to exist. When I'm doing something I've never done before and it's big and it's adventurous, there's virtually no chance it's going to feel good. And what I need in this, first of all, because Dan would say, first of all, we have to commit. And that's what you did when we got, heart, mind, and gut aligned. So the commitment is where it starts. Then we need courage. Courage is what happens next to actually move us forwards. And that's eventually, when we've done it enough times, then we're confident about it as well. And, I watch these things play as we move forwards. What was it like when you got there, you moved over and you settled in? Were there some holy shit moments like, oh, what have we done?
Yeah, 100%. And I'll tell you, this has probably been the part that I went the most challenging part and process, because what made this easier for me is both Bettina's parents and my parents are migrants. Yes. And so we have lived the migrant story. And what always helped me was to have a reference to say, okay, your parents did this, right? And so we're kind of the opposite, in that we've gone from Europe to Australia. We've gone from Australia to Europe. So we've actually done it in reverse. But a really fascinating thing happened for me, because I had so much validation. I had so much external referencing. I had the titles, the cars, the home, the profession, all of that. For us to come here and be here, I had to let go of all of that. So I had to let go of my role. So I haven't practiced. And there's a part of me that loves practice, but I had to let go of that.
Yes.
And when I say part of me, I love that. I had to let go of the Dr. Jim title here. And interestingly, the journey that I had to take was I also sought to get my Greek passport based through my heritage as a means of gaining visa here. And interestingly, what happened is there was a mistake in my date of birth on official records. And so effectively, I had to go through the whole process of going through the Greek courts, go to the High Court to reestablish my identity and have my official name revert back to my birth name. And so effectively, what I've done is I've had to let go of identity, both Dr. Jim, go back to Demetrius. And what it did is that it took me back to the inner child stuff of the migrant kid who moved to Australia, who had to learn a new language, all that kind of stuff. But it did it in reverse. It was kind of like a sliding doors moment.
Yeah.
And I had to grow. And it actually really revealed to me that everything that I did was as an overcompensation for the parts of myself that I went, hey, I'm the kid, I'm behind, I've got to work harder, and all my identity about working harder and harder than anybody else, etc., that gave me external validation, I had to surrender that and relive it and actually sit in it. So that's what I mean by that. And we had no language. We didn't know, I think we knew one direct person here, or two direct people in Barcelona. And it was a new environment, nobody that we knew. However, I always referenced my folks who have basically the exact same thing, without the resources, the capacity to continue doing work through the platforms that we still do. As hard as it was, it helped me to know that someone out there has done it harder.
Yeah.
And that was really helpful. And the biggest thing that I always learned just to reference one of the things that you said before about courage, a lot of the times you make a massive jump and you think that's all it's going to be, right? And then it's going to be easier. But a lot of the times there could be a small jump, but there's consistent jumps. That was a huge jump, and there have been still consistent jumps. So not much has gone to plan.
Yes.
Along that process. And I'd love it to say, yep, okay, you do that and everything's going to be okay. But you don't know, right? Mm-hmm. You don't know. And there's times where I wish it was easier, like we all do. However, I'm still clear that it was the right decision for us, irrespective of how hard that was and has been.
What opportunities have presented to you now that you've let go of that part of that identity?
Yeah.
What's presented now? What's come about?
Massive. It's been massive. So effectively what I found was really interesting is the first thing I did, I go and join my jiu-jitsu school and continued in training, because that was really important to me. However, it was really interesting. I didn't realize it to the extent that it was playing on, but I could talk about health and chiropractic more fearlessly than I could before, because I had no benefit to it. So I've referred more people to chiropractors in Barcelona than I probably did when I was the chiropractor back in Melbourne. Why? Because I could say, hey, I'm talking to you. There's no benefit to me. I'm talking to you because this is important to you. It's not about me. And so that's a big learning that I've had, is that if you continue to make it about the people you serve, the people you help, and not about you, which is always something that I knew, but reinforced it to me, it's been huge. So that was one avenue. So it's helped expand chiropractic. The other thing is, the parts of me that I always wanted to do, it just accelerated. So Batir and I have run trainings, we've run retreats. We just came back from a retreat, a living retreat from people that was in planning for 5, 6, 7 years. And yet through one thing or another, it got held up. So it just fast-tracked everything. So I guess I got to the point personally where I said, okay, if everything you knew previously does no longer exist, that is scary, but also liberating, because you go, great, I can basically start from a new canvas. And if I could do that, what would that look like? Probably no different to someone saying, hey, I've sold a practice, I'm starting a brand new one and we all know, right? We love our previous practice, but if we had an opportunity to start that again, you go, I wouldn't bring that on. So that to me was the liberating part, was to go, okay, devoid of any obligations and things that have to be, how would you design and create your ideal life? And that has been the opportunity. So I'm registering currently in the GCC in England because I want to do some locum work, because I missed that part of it. I don't want to practice full time anymore, but I feel like, okay, there's a part of me that, so I'm connecting with that. In the process of doing that, it's opened up trainings, coaching a lot faster than we had previously. So that's effectively what it has done, is it's taken off the blinders that meant that this is the path you're going, and it's just given me 360 perspective view that I probably didn't have before.
Yeah. And if you were chatting with Jim, 2 or 3 years ago, who didn't, because there is, the benefit of moving and something so big like that, most of the listeners aren't going to be doing that, but they like this idea of a reinvention. How could somebody move in that direction without having to move one side of the world to the other?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think a guy in the personal growth era, Brendan Burchard, talks about three types of life. He talks about the caged life. The caged life where you're in a cage, you're rattling your chains, you're trapped. He talks about the comfortable life, and the comfortable life is, by everybody's standard and reference, things are going great. You're comfortable, you've got the house, the car, the home, etc. But the unfulfilled part of you is the part of you that says, yeah, this is great, but there's more. And then you've got the charged life. And the charged life is when you're fully expressing everything you love doing, full alignment, you feel spark and joy, and you feel alive, basically. I was very clearly in the comfortable life. Everything was great. And there was obviously that unfulfilled part of us, that meant that when the opportunity came knocking on our door, we said, yes, we're going to do that. So to me, that's the answer. I don't think you have to move to the other side of the world. In actual fact, think about it, because it's a fascinating thing, but it's going to come with challenges. However, if it gives you the opportunity to express life at your highest calling, your potential, to feel alive, that's what you do. If it's taking on somebody else to create more freedom in your practice, if it's taking on a hobby or starting something new, getting out of your comfortable state and challenging yourself to express life fully and live in the charged life is really how I would interpret that. You don't have to move the other side of the world. Just take something that brings you alive and gives you joy and fun and challenges every part of you. Because if you've been practicing for 5, 10, 20, 30 years, there's some things that become second nature. They're automatic. You can do that without fully giving all of yourself. And I totally understand it. That's what I was doing. I could on autopilot, and that was great to a point. But the parts that went, yeah, but there's more to me that I'm not expressing. All of those came to life, and you had to pull out every tool and every skill that you had to navigate what's happened for us in the last 12, 18 months.
Yeah. It can, I know at times for me, it was alarming when I looked over my career as a chiropractor of, sometimes I would go years without really doing anything new. No new technique, no new communication. And it's like, oh, like, what have I done over this last 3 years? And then there's that excitement that used to be there, certainly in the first 5 to 8 years, where it's always something new. There's always that kind of reinvention that's happened there. Also, what has surprised you in terms of its difficulty, and then what's also surprised you in terms of the blessing of the move?
Great question. The difficulty has been, I guess, the processes and the bureaucracy. So I guess, if you work to a time frame, I'm just going to always kind of refer it back to, I guess, the audience that would most likely be listening. And that would be, hey, you think it's going to take X amount of time, and it takes double that, costs twice that amount that you anticipate, and you add 20 or 30%. So I think the part that has surprised me was just the process, how long that takes, and how difficult that takes. At one stage, we had lawyers in 3 countries working on this process, and so that really surprised me. What surprised me about how easy it was is the moment that I got clear on why we were doing what we were doing, how easy it was to let go of things that I thought were important, but weren't really. So, I let go of attachments to things that I thought were really important and got clear on what was. And so what really came across with us were our books, some clothes, and our dog. That was it. And I think when the opportunity came across, I said to Bettina, I said, look, yep, we'll go, let's do this, but our dog's coming. And that was complexity in itself as well too. But I was really clear that no one gets left behind who's part of our tribe, and our dog was part of it. So that would give me fulfillment. So I guess the simple part about it was, when you start the shedding process and get really, really clear on really what's important to you, things that you thought were important don't have that same hold on you. And in the process of letting go of those, freedom and opportunity to rediscover yourself, that you're not trapped in an identity of a previous version of yourself.
Yeah.
And that to me is what I've really enjoyed. The liberation, I guess, of just reinventing self again.
One of the first things you said in our chat here today is that this was an opportunity to reveal yourselves to yourself. What'd you find?
That there were the inner child stuff that I brought back was really revealing and really challenging, because I just didn't realize that there were parts of me that were the 7-year-old kid that I'd suppressed, that I'd actually carried on. And so to me, when I realized, and I really sat in it, and I gave it an opportunity to really learn about myself, that was really how much of what I did was as a compensation of the wounds or the areas of my life where I didn't feel like I was good enough than every other kid. So that really revealed that to myself. And it also just realized, and so I had to, like I said, I spent the last 12 months really leaning into that and getting really comfortable with that. So where previously bravado and courage came from, an ego to say, hey, I can do this. I can jump through any hoop or run through any wall. That was artificial courage. The courage to sit in the stuff that you've been not wanting to look at for 40 years, that's probably been more courageous. So that's what I meant by more courage and ever revealing ourselves to ourselves. And Bettina's been on a similar journey as well. And then us collectively as a couple. So what are we about? Who are we? Who are we without our titles? Who are all that kind of stuff is really what I meant by we've revealed ourselves to ourselves.
Yeah. Buddy, I'm even more full of admiration than I was beforehand. It's been wonderful to watch your journey. I admired the integrity, the depth that you and Bettina had over here in what you would teach, the way you went. There are a lot of in our profession that are flashy, and there are, on more than one occasion, I've witnessed that sometimes behind the curtain, it looks very different than in front of the curtain. And I always like to go out of my way whenever possible to let people know I'm far from perfect. If someone ever asks for relationship advice from me, I say, look, I'm batting at 50%. This is my second marriage. Okay, so let's keep that in context there too. But what I love about you and Bettina is that there really does seem to be an integrity, a congruency. From what I know, the front of house is matched by the back of house there too. And I admire that, and I'm inspired by that. And I want to thank you today for coming on and sharing even more of that too. I look forward to seeing what comes from you getting to know that 7-year-old even better and leaning into that as well, because that's those wounds in those dark places there too, I think there's often great gifts as well, buddy. So can you leave us with some final thoughts of, some of our listeners out there that might be thinking about doing difficult things, and what you'd suggest?
Thank you. Thanks, Angus. Look, first of all, thank you for the opportunity to come and have a chat to you as well. I'm very grateful for that. I think that the process of taking big steps and difficult steps is relative to different people. So, my parents took a huge risk by leaving everything they knew to follow through, to go to the other side of the world for the chance of an opportunity for their kids to be educated, which is the migrant story. Yet my parents never took risks again. It was almost like that they took their biggest risks and that was it, right? And the temptation in people hearing my story will realize I've got to load the bases up to take this biggest risk possible. And that's not the case at all. I think you start with little decisions and getting clear on what it is. What do I want to have today to eat? Decisiveness is really important. So I think that's a very important first step. And then leaning into that, wherever that takes you. And the process of revealing clarity for yourself will give you the more confidence, which is what you talked about earlier, to take bigger risks. Still considered risks, but risks nonetheless. And so it's more you don't have to take one huge risk thinking that that's going to take care of risk forever, but the discipline of taking regular, consistent action along this continuum quite often will take you further than my parents, who took one massive risk in one hit and then really just went, okay, I'm done. We're tapping out now. I just think, life is embracing these challenges and consistently doing that, and not just using it all up in one go would be probably a really important thing to finish off with, I would imagine.
Beautiful thought, buddy. I can't add to that. Good luck with this next phase from here too. I look forward to chatting with you real soon. Take care.
Yeah. Thanks, Angus. See you, mate.
If you've enjoyed listening to this podcast, you have to come and check out my Community Influencer program. It's my monthly coaching program where we take all this material and I'll work with you to help you apply it, implement it, and systemize it. The Community Influencer Group Coaching Program is designed to help you increase your practice income, impact, and enjoyment. Join me over at anguspyke.com/join. That's anguspyke.com/join. I'd love to see you there.